शास्त्रसुधा जलधे महितोपनिषत् कथितार्थनिधे हृदये कलये विमलं चरणं भवशङ्करदेशिक मे शरणं भवशङ्करदेशिक मे शरणम् करुणावरुणालय पालय माम् भवसागरदुःखविदूनहृदम् रचयाखिलदर्शनतत्त्वविदं भवशङ्करदेशिक मे शरणम् भवशङ्करदेशिक मे शरणम् भवता जनता सुखिता भविता निजबोधविचारणचारुमते कलयेश्वर जीवविवेकविदं भवशङ्करदेशिक मे शरणम् भवशङ्करदेशिक मे शरणम् भव एव भवानिति मे नितराम् समजायत चेतसि कौतुकिता मम वारय मोहमहाजलधिं भवशङ्करदेशिक मे शरणम् भवशङ्करदेशिक मे शरणम् सुकृते धिकृते बहुधा भवतो भविता समदर्शनलालसता अतिदीनमिमं परिपालय मां भवशङ्करदेशिक मे शरणम् भवशङ्करदेशिक मे शरणम् जगतीमवितुं कलिता कृतयो विचरन्ति महामहसच्चलतः अहिमांशुरिवात्र विभासि गुरो भवशङ्करदेशिक मे शरणम् भवशङ्करदेशिक मे शरणम् गुरुपुङ्गवपुङ्गवकेतनते समतामयतां न हि कोऽपि सुधीः शरणागतवत्सलतत्त्वनिधे भवशङ्करदेशिक मे शरणम् भवशङ्करदेशिक मे शरणम् विदितानमय विशदैककला न च किञ्चन काञ्चनमस्ति गुरो द्रुतमेव विधेहि कृपां सहजां भवशङ्करदेशिक मे शरणम् भवशङ्करदेशिक मे शरणम्
Sahana Bhavato Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahavidyam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Yam Brahma Varunendra Rudra Marutaha Stunvanti Divyaistavaihi Vedai Sangapadakramopanisadaihi Gayantiyam Samagaha Dhyanavasthita Tadgatena Manasa Pashyantiyam Yoginaha Yasyantam Navidusura Suraganaha Devaya Tasmai Namaha Devaya Tasmai Namaha. Humble prostrations to one and all. So in the last class we had seen the Lord consoles Arjuna by taking away his Divya Chakshu. Bhagwan withdraws his Vishwarupa Darshanam and he comes in the normal human form. Arjuna feels greatly relieved. All his fears, his worries, anxieties vanishes and he attains to peace. Once Arjuna comes back to his normal state, Bhagwan says, Arjuna, this vision which you have seen, this vision of Vishwarupam, you have seen it because of my yogic power, because of my power of Maya. Arjuna, this vision is very, very rare. Even Devatas don't obtain this vision. Even they long for this vision. Arjuna, you may do any kind of sadhana, yajna, dana, tapas. You may perform any kind of rituals. You may do any kind of charity or austerity or whatever kind of meritorious deed you do, but you will not gain this vision through that deed. Then what is the way to obtain this vision? There is only one way, the way of Ananya Bhakti. Bhaktya tu Ananyaya Shakyah. This Vishwarupa Darshanam can be obtained only through single pointed devotion, a devotion with no otherness. With such a kind of devotion, anyone can have this vision. Jnatum, drashtum, tattvena praveshtum shakyah. Anyone can know me, jnatum. Anyone can see me, drashtum. And anyone can enter into me, praveshtum. Entering into me means becoming one with me, tattvena in essence. So jnanam, darshanam and aikyam is possible with bhakti. So here we have to keep in mind, Bhagavan is no way criticizing yajna, dana, tapas, etc. Bhagavan is only emphasizing that whatever sadhana we do, we must do it with bhakti. Then the result is much, much greater. A half-hearted sadhana, a mechanical sadhana, a routine sadhana, an absent-minded sadhana will not give much result. But when sadhana is performed with devotion, the result is much more. The spiritual progress is faster. So this is the point which we have to Keep in mind. So Bhagavan has emphasized on bhakti. So how should be our lifestyle? How should we live our life in order to attain oneness with God? Now Bhagavan has said, Tattvena praveshtum shakyaha. It is possible to become one with me. So naturally a question comes, Bhagavan, how should I live my life so that I can easily become one with you? What am I supposed to do? So the last verse, the concluding verse, is a beautiful verse, and it is also a very important verse. We had chanted this verse in our last class. So once again I will just chant. matparamah madbhaktas sangavarjitah nirvairas sarvabhuteshu yas samameti pandava. So here this verse points out how we must live our life, how we must live a God-centered life so that we can attain to His nature, we can become one with Bhagavan. A beautiful verse. So what is said here? Saha mam eti. Bhagavan says, such a person reaches me. So earlier Bhagavan has promised, Tattvena praveshtum shakyaha. Every person, any person can become one with me. So Bhagavan is now telling how we can become one with Bhagavan. So who is that person who attains Bhagavan? So here 5 pointers are given. Pointer number 1, matkarmakrit, the one who performs all actions for me. Here me means Bhagavan. Matkarmakrit, the one who does all his actions as a worship of the Lord, performs for the sake of the Lord. Matkarmakrit. Pointer number 2, matparamah, one who considers Bhagavan as param, as supreme. The one who considers Bhagavan as the highest goal of life, the very purpose of life. Matparamah. Pointer number 3, matbhaktaha, the one who is full of devotion for Bhagavan. Pointer number 4, sangavarjitaha, the one who is free from sangha. Sangha means attachment. So one who is free from attachment towards the world. Pointer number 5, sarvabhuteshu nirvairaha, one who is free from hatred, vairi-bhāva, hatred or enmity towards all beings. So one who is free from the feeling of hatred, the feeling of enmity. So the one who practices all these 5 principles, saha mam eti, such a person reaches me, such a person becomes one with me. So this should be our lifestyle. So here if you see, there is a sadhana for different aspects of our personality. So matparamaha means considering Bhagavan as supreme, means what? Valuing Bhagavan. Now how do we value? We value anything with our intellect. We rate, we measure, we discriminate with our intellect. So considering Bhagavan as the supreme means what? At the intellectual level, we must have this conviction that Bhagavan alone is supreme. So, matparamaha is at the intellectual level. Bhaktaha, bhakti is an emotion of love. So, Bhaktaha means it is at the mind level. So, at the mind level, we must love Bhagavan. At the intellectual level, we must value Bhagavan. And then the third term, matkarmakrit. At the physical level, we must perform all actions for Bhagavan. So, this is at the body level. So, body level, matkarmakrit, mind level, bhaktaha, and at the intellect level, matparamaha. So, for all the aspects of our personality, body, mind and intellect, a particular sadhana is given. Yes. And now, with the BMI, when we deal with the world, what should be our attitude? Our attitude should be Sangha-varjitaha and Sarvabhuteshu nirvairaha. Sangha-varjitaha and nirvairaha. These two should be our attitude when we deal with the world. Sangha-varjitaha means freedom from attachment. Sangha means attachment. In another words, raga. So, Sangha-varjitaha means Raga-varjitaha. Nirvairaha means freedom from hatred, freedom from enmity. So, we can say freedom from dvesha, dvesha-varjitaha. So, Raga and dvesha, Sangha-varjita means freedom from Raga, Nirvairaha means freedom from dvesha. So, together we can say Raga-dvesha-varjitaha. So, while dealing with the world, we must be free from raga and dvesha. We must be free from likes and dislikes. So, at the intellect level, matparamaha. At the mind level, bhaktaha. At the body level, matkarmakrit. And at the worldly level, Raga-dvesha-varjitaha. So, if we can practice this, so Bhagavan says we can surely reach Bhagavan. We also can have that Vishwarupa Darshanam. Now, let us take up one by one. So, the first one is matparamaha, keeping Bhagavan as the highest goal of life. Unless we have a noble goal, the best in us will never come out. So, the first thing to do is to have a noble goal in life. A noble goal inspires us to strive hard. The goal should be noble and that goal should be thoroughly inspiring. Only then the best will come out of us. So, what can be the best goal of life? Best goal of life can only be Bhagavan. Bhagavan alone can be the highest goal of life. So, we must be intellectually convinced that Bhagavan alone can be the highest goal. For this intellectual conviction, we need to study the scriptures and contemplate upon the scriptures. We have to do Shravanam and Mananam. So, what is the end result of Shravanam and Mananam? There is a deep conviction that Bhagavan alone should be considered the very purpose of life. This is the end result of Shravanam and Mananam. Through scriptures, we come to know the nature of God. So, logically, we have to convince our intellect that God alone can be the highest goal. Now, what are the reasons which our scriptures give to prove to us that Bhagavan alone can be the highest goal of life? So, in our scriptures, we have the nature of God defined. What are the benefits we gain when Bhagavan is kept as the goal? Why should we keep Bhagavan as the goal? So many reasons are given. Some reasons we will discuss here. So, one reason the scriptures give is God alone is permanent, everything else is impermanent. Therefore, Bhagavan should be kept the highest goal of life. God alone is permanent. Everything else in this world is impermanent. So, if we want permanent happiness, permanent peace, permanent existence, permanent security, permanent blissfulness, permanent auspiciousness, if we want everything permanent, then we have only one way: we have to seek permanent God. Everything permanent can be gained only from permanent God. Only a permanent God can give us permanent happiness. Impermanent world cannot give us permanent happiness. So therefore, we must keep permanent God as the permanent goal of life. Matparam. Again the scripture says, Lord alone is real, everything else is illusory. Brahma Satyam Jagad Mithya. It is only the reality which will truly satisfy us. Illusions can only give us disappointments. Therefore, Bhagavan alone should be considered the highest goal of life, because He alone is ultimately real. Everything else has only a borrowed existence from this real Bhagavan. Bhagavan is real, He gives existence to everything else. So all that existence that we see, world's existence, our existence, everything else of things and beings, these existence, they are only of borrowed existence. Bhagavan alone exists. He alone is real. Therefore, Bhagavan should be kept as the goal of life. Again, when I choose God, what do I get? I get liberation. When I choose the world, what do I get? I get bondage. There is a choice for all of us whether to choose the world or to choose God. When I choose the world, I come back again and again to the world. This coming back again and again to this world is called birth-death cycle or samsara or transmigration. So, when I choose the world, repeated birth-death cycle is my destiny. But if I choose God, I become liberated from this infinite cycle, this never-ending birth-death cycle. So, when I choose God, I become free from all imperfections of life, all miseries of life. I become free from bodily existence, and thus I become free from all limitations of life, all sufferings of life. Taking up a physical body is nothing but pain. Janma, mrityu, jara, vyadi, dukkham. This is what Bhagavan says. Taking up a body is full of pain. Birth is pain, death is pain, disease is pain, old age is pain. So when I choose God, I become free from the compulsion of taking up a body. I become liberated and thus free from all miseries and sufferings. So therefore, Bhagavan alone should be chosen in life. Bhagavan alone should be considered the goal of life. And who is this Bhagavan? He is the very self in us. He is the very essence in us. He is our true nature. He is our essential nature. In Him we are born, in Him we exist, in Him we go back, we dissolve. So He is the very substratum, He is the very support in us. So therefore, He alone can be the ultimate goal of life. So this way, through various ways, scriptures convince us that Bhagavan alone should be considered the goal of life. So this study and reflection should continue. Then slowly over a period of time, we also become matparam. Bhagavan becomes such an intellect which is thoroughly educated in the ways of the scriptures. Such an intellect will start considering Bhagavan as the very goal of life. Now, this is the most important thing, because once the goal is set, everything else falls in place. We start allocating time for sadhana, because God is the most important, God is the goal. Our entire life becomes oriented towards attaining this goal. Our time we properly plan in order to attain this goal. Life then gets a purpose, life then gets a new meaning. So therefore, goal setting is very important. And what should be the goal according to Bhagavad Gita? Matparam, I alone should be your goal, Bhagavan says. So this is the first one. Second one, Bhaktaha. Bhagavan says, be my devotee. Not only that you should value me, you must also love me. With intellect we value God, with our mind we value and we love God. Loving is a language of heart, valuing is a language of head. So Bhaktaha means, Bhagavan says, both head and heart should consider me alone as the goal. Bhaktaha. So it is a language of emotion. How to love God? The psychology is, when somebody loves us perfectly, we cannot but love that person. So, the easiest way to love God is realizing how much that God loves us. Each and every incident in our life should be analyzed in such a way so as to see Bhagavan's hidden love for us. There is an unseen lover who is loving us all the time. He does not advertise his love, he silently keeps loving us. And his silent love can be detected from day-to-day events, day-to-day happenings. So if we can develop that intuitive eye to see how much Bhagavan loves us, then we will spontaneously, effortlessly, we will also be able to love him. So the first step is to know how much he is loving us. So when we recognize his love, we come to know that his love is infinite. His love is unconditional. His love is perfect, free from all kinds of imperfections, unsullied, without any expectation. His love is the most perfect love we can ever think of. When we analyze our life, we come to know how cruel we are. Our attitude towards him and his attitude towards us. If we compare and analyze, we find that even though we don't care for him, he always cares for us. Even though we don't pay any attention to him, he always pays attention to us. He is always concerned about us. This we come to know when we turn our attention to him. Even though we have not even an iota of love for him, his love for us is infinite. Even though we have all imperfections in us, his love for us is unconditional. In spite of all our imperfections, His love is infinite and unconditional. It's amazing to see all this, to recognize all these facts. Even though I don't pay any attention to His guidance, He constantly, lovingly guides us every moment. We don't pay any attention to His guidance, but every moment He is guiding us. This we come to know only when we look within. Now, these are all the expressions of love. When you love someone, you are concerned about that person. You are concerned about the welfare and well-being of that person, and this concern makes you advise, suggest the right path. So this Bhagavan is constantly guiding us, and this guidance is an expression of His love. We are absolutely ungrateful to Him. We received so many things from Him, we constantly receive so many things from Him, but what is His attitude? He keeps on fulfilling all our needs and wants of life without expecting any thanks from us. He doesn't bother whether we believe in His existence or not, whether we love Him or not, whether we are grateful to Him or not. He doesn't bother. He keeps on giving, 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 forgiving, 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 forgetting, forgetting, forgetting. He keeps on fulfilling our needs and wants, irrespective of our attitude towards Him. This is again an expression of love. He has nothing to lose by ignoring us. He has nothing to gain by loving us, but still He continues to love us. This is called as unconditional love. Love without any expectation. And what is our attitude? We have everything to lose by ignoring Him. We have everything to gain by loving Him, but still we don't love Him. This is the tragedy of mankind. All our suffering is because of this, because of our ignoring Bhagavan. People say Bhagavan is very cruel. The fact is, we are cruel to Bhagavan. All our sufferings in life is only because of this cruelty we show to Bhagavan. People say Bhagavan is very cruel, O Lord. Why have you created this world full of suffering? People think that Bhagavan has created this world of suffering and He is giving suffering to us. The fact is, it is not that He is giving suffering to us. We are creating suffering for ourselves by ignoring Him. The truth is, Bhagavan wants us to be free from all sufferings. But we perform action in such a way that the result of this action can only be suffering. So we perform papa karmas and create suffering for ourselves, and then we blame God for giving suffering to us. It is our own karma which is coming back to us. We don't blame our karma, we blame Bhagavan, who is karma phaladata. Bhagavan is helpless. He can give only karma phala. If karma is papa, karma phala has to be dukkha. A sinful action can have only sorrowful results. So in this case, Bhagavan is helpless. But what do we say? Bhagavan, you are responsible for all our suffering. See? Instead of blaming ourselves, we blame Bhagavan. So, when we don't see His love, we are not able to love Him. And when we are not able to love Him, we love the world. And when we love the world, we go back to the world. And our suffering continues. Punarapi jananam, punarapi maranam. So what is the first step? The first step is to recognize His love for us. To become aware of how much He loves us. Every incident in our life should make us see His love for us. When we become aware of His infinite, unconditional, unsullied love, we start automatically loving Him, and then this love becomes effortless and spontaneous. This is how we must become His devotees, matparam. This is how we must cultivate devotion for Him. Now, what is the benefit of having devotion for Him? When our heart is filled with love for Him, there is solace, there is peace, there is strength, there is perfect guidance, there is knowledge. You become very clear what should be done, what should not be done. There is clarity in life. There is comfort, there is mastery over the mind and the senses. So when devotion occupies our heart, all the wounds of the heart, the anxiety, worry, stress, strain, they are all wounds. All these wounds are healed, and the heart is filled with an inexplicable joy, a deep sense of fulfillment. So the wisest decision in life is learning to love Bhagavan. Right. So Bhaktaha. Next is matkarmakrit. Performing all actions for the Lord. Generally, what is our attitude? Generally, we perform all actions for ourselves. Before performing any action, the question we ask is, what will I get? How much will I gain? With this question, we perform action. With this motive, we perform our action. So all our actions are motivated by selfishness. And that is exactly the reason why we suffer in life. Selfishness gives only suffering. So what is Bhagavan saying here? Bhagavan says, perform action for my sake, matkarmakrit. Why should we perform action for Bhagavan? Naturally, this question will come. We have answered this question in very many places. We must realize that all factors necessary for performing any action comes from Bhagavan alone. To perform any action, we need the body, we need the mind, we need various instruments, we need the field of action, we need inspiration and guidance to act. Now, all these factors come from Bhagavan alone. So therefore, all our actions must be dedicated to Bhagavan. Bhagavan alone is the Kartā, the real doer. Then who are we? We are all mere instruments in His hands. This is the reality. This topic we had discussed earlier in detail in verse number 33 under the topic Nimitta-matram bhava savyasachin. This topic was in detail discussed. So there we discussed that God alone is real. This ego, this individual self is illusory. So for an illusory entity, real action is impossible. An illusory entity can never perform real action. So all actions must belong to the real Lord alone. So with this understanding we must work. This is matkarmakrit. Again, matkarmakrit means we must work for him as an expression of gratitude, as an expression of love, as our worship unto him. We must be thankful to the Lord for giving us an opportunity to serve him through our action. Matkarmakrit. Again, matkarmakrit means we should do what he likes and not what we like. This topic also was discussed earlier. We must work to please him, not to please ourselves. We must perform actions not instigated by our Rāga-dveshas and Kāmakrothas, but our actions must be inspired and guided by dharma and adharma. We must perform actions not to please the ego, but to please the Lord. We must perform action not to please the vyashti, but to please the samashti, not to please the microcosm, but to please the macrocosm, not to please the individuality, but to please the totality. Our individuality must be dissolved while working for the welfare of the totality. This is called as Yajña-bhāva in 3rd chapter. The attitude of sacrifice. You sacrifice yourself for the welfare of the totality. This is called as matkarmakrit. I am not there in the picture at all. It is Bhagavan alone doing his work through his instruments. This is called as matkarmakrit. Then what happens? Then Bhagavan is pleased. So he is pleased when we walk the path of dharma. He is pleased when we live a life of virtues. He is pleased when we obey him. Listening to this voice of conscience when we live our life, he is pleased. How do we know whether Bhagavan is pleased or not? Peace of mind is the proof. Bhagavan's joy is expressed as peace of mind which we experience in the heart. Bhagavan's unhappiness, Bhagavan's disagreement is experienced when we have guilt feeling, that regret, that conscience prick is an indication that Bhagavan is not happy with us. So listening to this voice of conscience, we must perform action. This is called as matkarmakrit. Our action should be in line with Bhagavan's desire, Bhagavan's will. We must obey the Lord. The more the obedience, more his love flows into us. The more we experience his love for us. The child experiences the love of its parents when the child is an obedient child. Parents have a general love for their children, but that general love becomes a special love when the children are good-mannered and obedient to their parents, isn't it? That love, parental love, gets intensified with obedience. In the same way here also, the more we listen to Bhagavan, the more we obey Bhagavan, Bhagavan's love also becomes more and more. That is a glory which we see in Pandavas, in Arjuna, etc. Look at Arjuna, for example. Why did Bhagavan love Arjuna so much? Bhagavan loved Arjuna because of his obedience. Arjuna just did whatever Bhagavan asked him to do. That is called as matkarmakrit. If Bhagavan has said something, I will just do it. This was the attitude of Arjuna. Bhagavan asked Arjuna to fight against Bhishma and Drona. Now, as far as Arjuna was concerned, it was a very, 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 very painful decision. Fighting against one's own teacher, fighting against one's own great-grandfather. Very painful. But When Bhagavan asked Arjuna to do, Arjuna just obeyed Bhagavan's order. Just imagine making Bhishma fall down on a bed of arrows. How much painful it must have been for poor Arjuna, because he was so much attached. He had so much of affection for his grandsire. Arjuna just did whatever Bhagavan said. This is the glory of Arjuna. Bhagavan asked to chop the head of Karna. Now, according to the laws of war, it was adharma, because Karna was busy trying to lift his chariot. The wheel of the chariot was stuck. So, he was busy trying to lift the wheel. So, according to the laws of karma, you are not supposed to attack a warrior who is not fighting with you. So, Bhagavan said, Arjuna, chop his head off. Now, it was clearly dharma from the worldly standpoint. It was clearly adharma from the worldly standpoint, but Arjuna just obeyed Bhagavan. He did not bother about what the world would think of him, whether the world would ridicule him for this cowardly act, whether the world would criticize him, defame him. He just did not bother. His attitude was, Bhagavan said it, I am just going to do it, without analyzing it with my limited intellect. Bhagavan is Sarvatnya, so whatever Bhagavan says, that itself is dharma. Though from the worldly standpoint it may appear to be adharma. Who are we to comment upon the decisions of the Lord? This was his attitude. Whatever Bhagavan says, that itself is a dharma, because Bhagavan is an embodiment of dharma. So, obeying Bhagavan is the greatest dharma. With this attitude, Arjuna did all his duties. Bhagavan loved Pandavas for this one reason, because all these Pandavas, they implicitly obeyed Bhagavan. Bhagavan became their messenger, their negotiator, because Bhagavan knew that whatever decision he would take, the Pandavas would cheerfully accept it. Bhagavan asked for 5 villages from Duryodhana. If Duryodhana had given just 5 villages, Pandava would have cheerfully accepted, because it is the will of the Lord. Now, that is the greatness of Pandavas. After the war also, when Yudhishthira became the king, he was ruling the kingdom as per the direction of the Lord. That is why Yudhishthira's kingdom was compared with Ramarajya. Truly speaking, Yudhishthira's kingdom was Krishna Rajya, because Bhagavan was ruling the kingdom, making Yudhishthira as an instrument. Yudhishthira was only a nimitta, only an instrument. This was the glory of Pandavas. In fact, this was the parting advice given by Bhishma to Yudhishthira just before leaving the body during that Uttarayana Punyakala. Bhishma was lying down on the bed of arrows waiting for Uttarayana. So, this was the parting advice given to Yudhishthira. Bhishma said, Yudhishthira, my son, this man who is standing next to you, don't misunderstand him to be some ordinary human being, some ordinary Yadava, some charioteer, some friend, some messenger, some relative. No, he is none other than Bhagavan himself. So, rule the kingdom as per his will, as per his guidance. This was the parting advice of Bhishmacharya to Yudhishthira. This is called as matkarmakrit, performing actions for the sake of the Lord. So, matparamaha, madbhaktaha and matkarmakrit. Now, the two terms Sangha-varjitaha and Sarvabhuteshu Nirvairaha. Bhagavan says these two terms are also important. While dealing with the world, these two important instructions are very useful. Sangha means attachment, Another word is raga. So Sangha-varjitaha means Raga-varjitaha. Vaira means enmity. So another word for it is dvesha, hatred. So Nirvairaha means dvesha-varjitaha. So Raga-dvesha-varjitaha. So what is the instruction given? Arjuna, while dealing with the world, be free from likes and dislikes. Why is Bhagavan giving this instruction? Now if we analyze, we find that if our heart is filled with Raga-dvesha, then the earlier three instructions can never be practiced. If there is Raga-dvesha in our heart, we can never become matparama, matbhakta and matkarmakrit. These three cannot be practiced. That is why Bhagavan is giving this special instruction. We can practice the first three instructions only if our heart is devoid from Raga-dvesha, devoid of Raga-dvesha. Now let us see what happens when Raga-dvesha rules us, how matparama, matbhakta and matkarmakrit, it becomes impossible for us to practice. Let us analyze that aspect now. So when Raga-dvesha rules us, the first one is matparamaha. It is just not possible to practice matparama. Matparama means keeping Bhagavan as the very goal of life, remembering him all the time. This is just impossible to practice. Instead of matparama, we become tatparamaha. Tat means that person. Let us say we are attached to a person. Then our life revolves around that person. That person becomes a central focus of our life. That person becomes the highest goal of our life. We crave for that person's presence in our life. Then instead of matparama, we then helplessly practice tatparama, isn't it? Practicing matparama becomes impossible when heart is filled with Raga-dvesha. In the same way, matkarmakrit becomes impossible. We become tatkarmakrit. All our actions are to please that person. Our actions become dedicated for that person. We do everything to please that person. In fact, we readily compromise with the higher values of life for the sake of that person. That we see in daily life. Politicians make use of their money power, manpower, muscle power, their influence, everything to save their near and dear ones who are arrested for criminal offense. They try to protect their relatives, isn't it? Now this is called as tat karmakrit. So instead of mat karmakrit, we become tat karmakrit. We start performing action for the people towards whom we are attached. Whatever it may be, whether it is raga or dvesha, our actions are directed towards such people who rule our heart through raga and dvesha. So mat karmakrit also cannot be possible when the heart is filled with Raga-dvesha. In the same way, madbhaktaha becomes tadbhaktaha. We are so attached to that person, we are so devoted to that person that we become totally dependent on that person for our emotional well-being. If that person is happy, I am happy. If that person is miserable, I also become miserable. I become a devotee of that person. Devotee of that person means what? I am totally devoted to that person. We become emotionally enslaved, isn't it? All these Hindi film songs, in these Hindi movies we see, there are such lines in those songs. And some of these lines say, even God cannot break our relationship. All these romantic songs, etc., they have this line. The two lovers, they are telling each other, even God cannot break our relationship, even God cannot separate us. That strong is our love towards each other. Such lines are there. Now these lines they express the heights of delusion. Just imagine, these lines say that God is a real villain who breaks our relationship. Rāga-dvesha completely deludes a person. Bhagwan, who is our true well-wisher, Bhagwan, who is our true lover, he is considered a villain, and the worldly love is glorified. This is what Rāga-dvesha does. So instead of mad-bhaktaha, Rāga-dvesha makes us tad-bhaktaha. So Bhagwan is warning all of us, as you are cultivating these three, remember, may the heart be devoid of Rāga-dvesha. Now there is another problem with Rāga-dvesha. What is the problem? You see, at the seat of meditation, if our heart is filled with Rāga-dvesha, extreme likes and dislikes, then we find that the mind becomes occupied with that person. Such a mind is not available for God remembrance. Such a mind gets stuck with that person, and we find it difficult to withdraw the mind from that person. A person whom we hate too much, mind gets stuck with that person. A person whom we love too much, get attached too much, again the mind gets stuck there. So instead of meditating on God, we find ourselves meditating on that person. Instead of giving importance to God, we give importance to that person. So this is what happens with Rāga-dvesha. Why do we find that mind is wandering here and there at the seat of meditation? All these wanderings are only because of Rāga-dvesha. Single pointed attention to God becomes impossible when the mind is filled with Rāga-dvesha. So Bhagavan wants us not to have Rāga-dvesha. We must intelligently deal with the world without allowing the world to create Rāga-dvesha in us. That is called intelligent living. So, such a person who keeps these 5 points, matparamaha, madbhaktaha, matkarmakrit, Rāga-varjitaha, dvesha-varjitaha. These 5 points, Bhagavan says, such a person will definitely reach me. So now, Bhagavan has created a deep desire in Arjuna to develop devotion towards God and to become one with God. Bhagavan has created that desire. And Bhagavan has also said that the most important qualification for all spiritual attainment is Ananya Bhakti. Vishwarupa Darshanam is easily possible with Ananya Bhakti. One can merge with God with Ananya Bhakti. So since Bhagavan has given emphasis on this Bhakti, now Arjuna wants to know more about Bhakti. So therefore, the next chapter is rightly named Bhakti Yoga. Everything related to Bhakti. So this is the next chapter. Thus, this Ekadasha Adhyaya, the 11th chapter comes to an end. And what is the name of this chapter? Vishwarupa Darshana Yoga. Vishwarupa Darshana Yoga. In this chapter, Bhagavan shows Vishwarupa Darshanam to Arjuna and fulfills his desire. And Bhagavan gives the qualification necessary to give this Vishwarupa Darshanam, and the qualification is Ananya Bhakti. So, this is the essence of this chapter. So, this is a dialogue, Sri Krishna Arjuna Samvade. So, in this dialogue, this knowledge was given. Brahma Vidyayam Yoga Shastre. So, this Bhagavad Gita contains Brahma Vidya and Yoga Shastra. Bhagavad Gita gives us the knowledge of Brahman and also the way to reach Brahman. The path also is mentioned. Yoga Shastra is also there. The path to reach the goal and the nature of the goal, both are mentioned. And this Bhagavad Gita is nothing but the essence of the Upanishads. So, Bhagavad Gita, so Upanishads. So, in this 11th chapter, this was a discussion. So, now we take up 12th chapter in the next class. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinah Sarve Santu Niramayah Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Ma Kaschid Dukkha Bhag Bhavet Asato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.